All righty, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Countless Vlogcast. My guest today is Jasmine Cornelis. How are you? No, sorry, I said your name wrong, but how are you today? And tell us about yourself.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, as you said, my name is Jasmine Carnelis. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in California. I currently work in aviation, so dealing with flight attendants, mechanics, things like that, specifically as it relates to substance abuse. And I also have a part-time online practice via Talkspace, so I'm able to work with clients that way during the pandemic. And then I'm also finishing up my dissertation for my doctorate. So that is who I am, and that is what's going on with me.
That's great. Great intro. So, as a therapist, how has going to therapy helped you personally?
It's helped me personally. Well, for one, I think just being able to connect, be more authentic with my own clients. I know sometimes it's challenging to go to therapy, sit across the room from somebody, and basically spill all your secrets and tell, everything that you've held in for so long. So, me being able to have that experience, I think it helps me to be more genuine, more compassionate, and understanding with my clients. And then also, therapists aren't perfect, we're humans as well. We go through things all the time, and it has definitely helped me to address some of my own issues as I navigate helping other people through theirs. And it's also a form of self care. As therapists, we're bound by confidentiality. With some caveats here and there, but for the most part, you are taking on other people's energies and emotions and things like that, and it can get overwhelming. So for therapy, for me to go to therapy, it's a way for me to release and make connections about, wow, this really activated me in a session. Like maybe I need to process this a little bit more. So I would say it's been very, very helpful personally and also professionally.
So, what are some issues you find in the Black community, and why do you think it's a stigma in the Black community to go to therapy, talk to somebody outside the family?
I actually, that is a part of my dissertation. And so I've been doing a lot of research, and I think probably, I don't want to say more than anything, but a really big factor is that the healthcare system, um, and mental health is under the healthcare system for a long time. It excluded, it excluded people that looked like us, or it used people that looked like us for negative, negative things. When you think about the Tuskegee experiment, with the syphilis and things like that. So I think there's this long-standing mistrust in the Black community as it relates to healthcare. And then also there's the spiritual aspect, the religious aspect. So, for a lot of us, we heard, this person, they just need to pray, pray the demon away or whatever. And not to say that prayer is not a thing and that it doesn't work, but I think we are starting to understand that you can have religion and also have a therapist. They both can work together to help, heal a person. But I think there continues to be a stigma just because sometimes there's not a lot of representation when it comes to therapists. Some people don't want to talk to somebody who they feel like they can't connect with. So if they're sitting across the room from somebody who doesn't look like them, they don't want to talk. There's still a stigma of, I think we have this idea that sometimes when we go through things that we're an anomaly and that no one else has ever gone through this before, and that's just not true. And so I think, in the media in the last few years, especially with celebrities, the way that it's portrayed on television and things like that, it definitely has opened up this idea that all types of people go to therapy, people that you may have never even guessed, and it has benefited them. So there is still a stigma there, but I definitely see some strides being taken as far as the way that we accept, talks about mental health and going to therapy.
So you talked a little about it a little bit, but what are some issues you find in the Black community that you find over and over again, like between like women and men in the Black community?
As far as like when they come into therapy.
Yeah, like what do they talk about? What do they open up to you about?
A lot of times it's about maybe some sort of traumatic experience that they've had, usually as children, that they never really got to deal with, and so then it colors their interactions with other people. So, obviously I can't give specific examples, but just generally speaking, if you have, some sort of sexual assault or physical abuse by a child,
Hmm.
a lot of times when people grow up, they kind of just stuff that down. They don't really address it, or maybe they were never given the space to address it, even if they wanted to address it. And so you see these patterns play out in their interpersonal relationships, in their romantic relationships. So that could look like mistrust, or maybe they find it challenging to fully open up to someone else because they've been hurt in such a dramatic way in the past. So there's a lot of secrecy, and different things like that. So I definitely see that, you know, the issues that we've experienced in the Black community, especially about not telling people your business, it continues to play out in our relationships with other people, not just our romantic relationships, but interpersonal relationships, period. And I think for me, that's one of the biggest things. I also see a lot of substance use as a way to cope with uncomfortable or overwhelming or negative emotions, because a lot of times we don't know how to verbally express what it is that we're feeling. Um, and it sounds pretty simple, but it's easier said than done for somebody to say, you know, I am not okay. I feel afraid. I feel anxious because I'm worried about. Um, and so you'll see a lot of people use some sort of substance to reduce that anxiety, but they never really get to verbally express it. And so it continues to, come up over and over again. And then you have these patterns that get started. So those are two of the biggest things that I see in our community as far as the people that I've been working with.
So being a marriage counselor, you see a lot of like childhood traumas and like adolescent traumas carry into relationships. Would you say?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And what are some? There's always problems, but I think now in 2020 we got them up more solutions. So, what are some mechanisms to cope with issues and problems?
Definitely, the first thing I'm going to say is therapy, because, like I said, it can be really challenging to just say what you need to say it out loud. Sometimes it's like we know certain things, but when we say it out loud, it makes it real. And that can be very, very scary. So, therapy is a way for you to go. You have this trained person, you have this non judgmental person, you're in a safe space, and you can talk things out. And, a lot of times that's very helpful in and of itself, because we hold on, we take so much in, and it just kind of sits there until we explode. And so just to be able to verbalize it can be helpful. I think for those people who may not be ready to go to therapy, or are in the process of trying to find a therapist, some of the easiest coping mechanisms that I would offer, journaling for sure. Um, Now, I will say that everything is not for everybody. I have a really hard time with journaling. I myself have several journals that are halfway written in, um, but journaling can be really good because it's your personal pages to get out whatever it is you need to get out. Go back and read it if you want to. Maybe you just need to get it out on paper, but it's your stuff for you. Also, working out, I think, especially in a time like now where people are still dealing with their own personal stuff, but then we're also in the middle of a pandemic and there's so much uncertainty around us. I think being able to exhaust that extra energy and that anxiety is really, really helpful. If you are into prayer and meditation, that is very helpful for a lot of people, because it gives you an opportunity to quiet your mind. We have so much going on around us, um, that we never really take a moment to focus on our breathing or really just kind of sit in silence, and just take in what actually is happening right now. Like, we're not always present in the moment. So those are, three, I think I said three of the most simple and easiest things that people. And then, of course, as you work with a therapist, they'll be able to tailor certain coping skills for you.
Okay, great. So another issue with what's going on now with like we have COVID going on, we have Black Lives Matter movement going on. So one issue is like race too. I don't know if you can speak on this too or give something like some words direct people in. But how would you help clients deal with racism or like any person that may have like a problems coming to you like talking about may have deal with like race on a daily basis
Hmm.
and then your personal experience.
Yeah, so I'll speak to clients first. Um, I think that, of course, this is very unfortunate. We know that it's happening. We don't know if it's ever going to change or if we'll see a change in our lifetimes. So I think, on a basic level, I try to encourage my clients and empower my clients. One, to realize that racism is not rooted in fact at all. It's rooted in hate. And so when you come across these people who hold these beliefs, it really says nothing about you as a person. It definitely says more about them as people because they're just filled with hate. And so I try to empower my clients to remember who they are, be confident in who they are, and know that, the things that they hear or the things that they see has absolutely nothing to do with them. So that's just kind of on a basic emotional level, because I know a lot of times we can get discouraged, when we hear people saying different things about, not specifically us, but just Black people as a whole. And it's very disheartening. And I think, for clients who come to me and they're dealing with this in their jobs or, at school, even with family members, it definitely is something where the individual has to decide what it is that's most important to them or what it is that they like to do. So you're free to make whatever decision you would like, as in cutting people off. I'm definitely a proponent of doing that if they are not serving you, or quitting a job, walking away from a relationship. I do know that that is not ideal for many, many, many people. So for those people who can make the decision to kind of walk away and, move on and separate themselves from the people that are causing this or engaging in racist behavior and racist rhetoric and things like that, go ahead and do that. But for those of us who cannot do that, it definitely is about looking inward and realizing like it's okay to stand up for yourself. So even if you don't leave a job or relationship, you're more than entitled to say, I don't like the words that you said. I don't like this. I feel like this. You don't have to be quiet just because you may stay in a situation.
That's great. So in terms of like now with everything going on too, how can people receive virtual therapy not being able to go to like in person now? And two-part question, and then the next part is like paying for that too. What are some options and resources for that?
Mhm. So, I mean, I'm licensed in California, but I have colleagues all over the country. And as of this moment, most people have gone into the telehealth world. For this is, first, I think, with the development of Talkspace and BetterHelp, that and we're like, oh, you can do therapy online. But now we're dealing with COVID, and mostly everybody is online now. So you still have the same options. If you have insurance, you can go through your insurance. You could just ask the therapist that you find, oh, do you take Blue Cross? Oh, do you take Kaiser or whatever the case may be? For those people who don't have insurance, uh, you still have options. BetterHelp and Talkspace are definitely two really good online therapy platforms, and you don't need insurance. Of course, you'd have to pay out of pocket. However, it is cheaper than traditional therapy. So I think for Talkspace, and this is not an ad or anything like that, but, and don't quote me, but I want to say maybe a month of their basic plan might be about 260 or 280. And that's for 30 days. Whereas in traditional therapy, you're going to be paying maybe $100 to $300 per session. And so that is a benefit of virtual therapy. But, you know, as of right now, monetary issues aside, it really shouldn't be that hard to find a therapist because, like I said, everybody's moved to online. I will say with online therapy, for many people, it is challenging to adjust to as far as clients are concerned, because maybe, you know, they don't have a quiet space, or maybe they don't have a safe space in their home to talk to the therapist. A lot of times people will go to the therapist and it's their only moment of, you know, reprieve or silence or whatever, and now they don't have that. And I think also with the technology piece, we're so social and we're so used to being with people in the flesh, that it is a little, it's a little weird to have to, you know, tell someone your whole life story, or, you know, cry maybe over the computer or over your phone. um, so it's an adjustment. It's even an adjustment for therapists because, like I said, this is basically a first that most people have moved to an online platform. um, but we're all learning together, and it definitely gets easier as you go. Like, I've had clients who say, I've never done therapy before, I thought it would be kind of weird, you know, seeing you on the computer, but it's fine. You know, there's not that they don't have the same anxieties that they would as far as coming into the office. Like, you could not wear pants if you don't uh, and no, you know what I mean? You know, you could be cooking and doing therapy at the same time. So it definitely has benefits. And then there are also some cons depending on the person.
Okay, great. So that's one way the industry has changed, though. How else has the mental health industry changed over the years? I guess I'll say 2 to 3 years. How else did it change? I know virtual is one thing, but how else?
I would also say the marketing of therapy has changed. So the way that therapists are getting themselves out to clients. So, um, you know, aside from like virtual sessions, but now you're looking at the social media piece. So a lot of therapists might have, you know, Instagram pages or Facebook pages. They'll do live, you know, question and answer sessions. They are getting themselves out in a way that they weren't before. And I think that's very helpful in also decreasing that stigma that we talked about earlier of the mental health field, because people have more access to it now. It's not as much of a secret, you know, as it once was before. And the field has also changed just because, you know, consumers have more access to information. So, you know, if people want to, within reason, if they're, you know, having some symptoms of depression or anxiety, they're now able to Google it and say, wow, like I identify with this. Um, Now, there are definitely some dangers in doing that because, as we all know, I think everybody in their lives has looked up some sort of medical symptom and they thought they were going to die in the next 5 minutes, right? Um, but you know, using those platforms, those social media and the internet responsibly, I think it definitely opens up more knowledge about mental health. There are more organizations who do outreach and things like that. So the field has definitely gotten a lot more, I don't want to say loose, but it's a lot more consumer friendly, I would say.
Okay, great. So going to therapy is one thing, but after the session, and I guess so you having like crisis or issues in the midweek. So what are some ways to cope after a therapy session? And if not, they're not able to receive like therapy, or like they were still struggling after a session, or like during the week or something like that.
Mhm. You know, I do want to say, even though therapy traditionally is once a week. You can always reach out to your therapist. Now, are they going to get back to you instantly? I can't say, but it's not like you have to hold everything in until you see them the next. And then also, I think, which I kind of touched on earlier, but just having safe and supportive people. So when it comes to therapy, maybe you don't want everybody to know that you're going, but I know there's probably one person in your life who you may have shared that you're going to therapy with, or you trust them, or you're able to have these heart to heart conversations with them. So if you find yourself, throughout the week, just kind of needing to release, I would definitely say talk to a trusted and supportive person. And then also, you will have those coping skills. So you know that if you start to feel anxious, you're gonna go take a walk because you need to get out of the environment that you're in. You know that maybe you're going to color. Coloring is very, very therapeutic. I wish I knew that as a child when I didn't want to do it, but as an adult, they have adult coloring books, and that's a really good thing. Deep breathing throughout the week is a really good thing. And I think as you go through therapy, sometimes you will have those uncomfortable moments, and that's okay, because that is just you becoming more self-aware and just being in tune more with your emotions and what's going on for you mentally. um, but definitely having a supportive person, and then having those go-to coping skills. Like I said, everything doesn't work for everybody. Everything will not work at each time. So if my coping skill is like yoga, I can't be in the office like, hey, you guys, I'm going to take an hour. I need to go do some yoga. I need to be able to pull from my bag of tricks and figure out what's going to be helpful in this moment, in the space that I'm in. So deep breathing, coloring, journaling, walking, exercising, sometimes even napping. I know sometimes people like to say, they don't like to tell people to take naps because you're kind of like running from your problems or whatever, your feelings. Sometimes you just need a good nap. And that's okay. Sometimes you need to just kind of veg out and go binge watch a TV show for like an hour or two. And, those things are okay. So I would tell somebody, just do something simple and something quick. Because if you have to think too much about it, it makes it that much more, overwhelming.
Wait, so to transition a little bit too, let's talk a little about dating, relationships, and COVID. Like, what are some issues you found like with this time? Because I know a lot of like couples are like shacked up together like for a long time too. So I was like, what are some issues you find, and so what are some ways like people can like I guess I don't know what I'm like just trying to say, but just like stick together through these hard times.
Yeah. So there I there's a lot of people who have come to me since COVID started, since quarantine started, and they're like, I am quarantining with my partner and I'm losing my mind. Um, I think, even married people have come to me like, I've been with my husband or I've been with my wife for 15 years, but I'm about to go off the deep end. And I think that says a lot just for the way that we communicate in our relationships. And now it's like you're with this person pretty much 24/7. And so we don't have those same moments to ourselves that we once did, like on your drive to work or on your way to the grocery store or whatever. So, for those couples, I would, or those people, you might not even be a couple, you might just be having to quarantine with somebody. But I definitely think still having those moments for you is important. So, I know everybody doesn't live in a mansion, but you need to be able to carve out some time for yourself, because you're still an individual and now you're being forced to be with another person for the bulk of the day. So you want to be able to separate yourself. I think that's a really big thing that I haven't been seeing with the couples I've been working with. Um, because I think we kind of just are like, oh, we're quarantining, so we're at home, and that's just really the end of it. But it's like, no, I need to go sit in the car, or I need to go take a drive. I'm gonna go by myself, and that's fine. And I think also working on communication at a time like this is helpful with partners. So sometimes I'll ask my couples, what is your partner's love language? And they're like, I don't know. I didn't even know that was a thing. And, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, it really is just, how does your partner show love? How do they receive love? So some people receive love, or like, I'll know that somebody cares about me, or it means more to me when someone spends quality time with me, right? Just uninterrupted quality time. For somebody else, it means more to them when somebody buys them something, or it means more to them when somebody tells them good job and gives them kudos. So every person is different. And I think the more you know about the way your partner receives and interprets love, and how they are most comfortable communicating, that is going to be really the key in getting through the quarantine. We don't know how much longer we're going to be here, but communication is key.
That's great. So, I know this may be a tough subject too, but it happens though, like domestic violence, domestic disputes, and a lot of subjects have talked about like policing and like ways to maybe not like call the police or deal with the police too. So if you could speak on methods like that don't involve policing to help like couples and other people like solve their problems without getting police involved, it's like before it reaches that level.
Right. So, I mean, there's definitely, I would recommend NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They have a lot of resources. They have, listings for shelters and different programs that people can go to. There's also, um, I am drawing a blank right now, but as far as mental health is concerned, there's also the psychiatric response team or psychiatric emergency team. So, they are a group of therapists and psychiatrists and doctors that come out. I have called the PET team before. They do, now I'm not going to lie, they do come with the police, but you're not calling the police. So I think that's kind of a difference. It's just more for the protection of the provider that's coming out, but they really do take the lead in making sure, the situation is stable and everybody is safe. And so it's less about the police coming in and kind of just saying like, okay, what's going on here? And then things get out of control. So
Yeah.
they're dealing with, trained professionals who are able to de-escalate, talk someone down. There's also the suicide prevention hotline. So that can be very helpful for people who are dealing with depression or suicidal ideation, or, actively wanting to commit suicide. And family members and friends can also call that hotline as well. So I think it really is about educating yourself, and also providers and professionals educating the public on the options that they do have instead of just calling 911. So again, I'll say, NAMI, it's nationwide. I don't think it's specific to California. So that would be a really good resource. And then getting familiar with, shelters in your area. A lot of times you can just call them, especially if you're dealing with DV. You can call and say, what do I do? And they'll tell you what to do. And so that way you don't have to go the 911, the police route.
Yeah, that's great. Cause I think like even before now, like calling the police for like black people has been like tough situation because you've seen what happened like with like all these like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. That case hasn't been solved
Right.
too. I think a lot of people are looking at this and thinking like, oh shit, like what happened to me, you know? So it's like tough, you know. So it's good to have these conversations, you know.
Yeah,
'Cause
definitely.
it's definitely like tough too because like therapy is like definitely gonna help too, and just like having like outlet too, you know, like having like community sense too, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially for us, for Black people, like, we're navigating through the world. We're seeing things that are very, very activating. Sometimes we feel like we can't do anything about it, or we don't know who to turn to because, you know, for me, I think probably for people that are around my age, I'm not going to tell my age, but people that are around my age, our parents are people that probably lived through the 60s, or actually lived through segregation. Like my mother was born in 1950 in the South. So she saw a lot of things. And, you know, her and my father's reaction to certain things now, or the way that they talk about certain things now, it's going to be a little bit different from the way that I'm seeing it now, because you know, we live in a different time. And so I think that outlet you mentioned, like having something where we can just go and be like, this is too much. Like, I just want to scream. And also moving forward, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, changing legislation and defunding the police and reallocating those funds to different groups and organizations and resources. And I think moving forward, we really have to continue to push that, because you don't want to have to call 911, um, you know, when someone is severely depressed and they're talking about suicide. Why would I call the police for that? They're not trained really to deal with that. Like, I want somebody who went to school who can do a suicide assessment on the spot, you know, different things like that. So we, you know, as much as it's important for us to be able to manage our emotions and express our emotions and learn those coping skills, we also have to continue to be proactive in making sure that things change in the future for us and the people that are coming behind us.
Great. So we talked a little about different generations too. So if you give advice out there to like those studying the field of mental health and those just beginning their practice, if you give them some advice, some guidance, that'd be great.
You know, for people that are beginning, I would definitely say do your own therapy. It will change your life. I don't know that people always understand just how much things will come up for you as a therapist. And it is your responsibility to make sure that those things coming up don't impact you to the point where you're doing harm to your clients. So, you know, more than anything, I would say engage in your own therapy. Um, and then also find someone who is doing what you want to do and talk to them. You know, the field, there's so much to do in this field. People specialize in different things. Like, you know, my specialization is marriage and family therapy, but there are people also work in substance abuse. There are people who specifically work with children age 0 to 5. I don't do that. You know, there's people that specifically work in gerontology. So you're dealing with the older population or the prison population or, you know, all these different things. So I think, um, you know, having someone who, not to say they've been in the field for 50 years, which is great. But maybe you want to find somebody who's been in the field for 50 years and somebody who's been in the field for 5 to 10 years, because those experiences might be a little bit more closely connected to you. But definitely having that mentor relationship with someone, somebody you can bounce ideas off of. Um, and then I think also, which kind of ties into the therapy aspect, is really thinking about why it is you want to be in this field. Um, we are all clients at the end of the day. Like, we all come into this field wanting to fix something or address something that we see in the world, in our communities, in our families. And I think we need to be very clear on that so that we can have a clear path on where it is we're trying to go with it.
Great. So I know we spent half hour talking about why therapy is great. So just to keep it real, what if therapy doesn't work for somebody too? What are some alternatives to therapy if it doesn't work? Say somebody's going to therapy for maybe 2 to 3 months or maybe a couple of years and it doesn't work for them too. What do you recommend for them?
So, the first thing that I'll say, which I feel like I should have said before, but I like to tell people, whether they're my clients or people just coming to me with help in finding their own therapist, therapy is not one size fits all. So, it, I don't know the statistics, but I know for certain that there are many people who don't find a therapist and then continue working with them for years. You will go through 2 or 3 or 4 therapists until you find the one that fits, for you. And that's totally fine. Like, it doesn't mean you're weird or that you're not like everybody else. It's just, like I said at the beginning, I'm a human you may not connect with me, and you may not want to work with me. So if we've been working together for 3 months and you're like, no, I don't like this, that's okay. You can still try again. So I will say that. The other thing, meditation. Meditation is very helpful as an alternative. Yoga can be an alternative because it's connecting your mind and your body. So I think anything that is focused on your mind is something that can be an alternative. So meditation, yoga. If you want to go the spiritual or religious aspect, you can speak to, a clergy member, like a pastor, or some trusted person at your church. Will they give you the same exact perspective as a therapist? Probably not, but it's still helpful. They may not go in depth on certain things, but they're still able to address, different aspects of life. They're able to pray with you and different things like that. So if it doesn't work for somebody, find something else that definitely challenges you to be self-aware, be in tune with your body and your mind, and, what you're putting into your body and your mind. I think those things would be really helpful.
Great. So I just want to thank you for your time and sharing your experience, expertise. It was great.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad.
And where can people find you at? Where are the social media, websites, all that information?
So they can find me on Facebook and Instagram at one ONE Jazzy JAZZY therapist. THERAPIST. I think I spelled that right. At One Jazzy Therapist. I post different things. They can also email me at jcarnelis@gmail.com. If somebody needs assistance with finding a therapist or they have more questions about mental health, they can always reach out via email or social media. I'm definitely open. That is my passion. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you again for coming on and sharing. It was great.
Thank you so much.
This has been the Countless Vlogcast with my guest, Jasmine Cornelis, therapist, marriage therapist. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys want to rewatch this, you can watch this on YouTube. Justin, that means Countless Rich. Also, you can subscribe to the Countless Vlogcast on YouTube.